Looks good. All right. Thanks for being here, y'all. Last stream, we're working on this open source Python Hello Web monorepo. And in the last stream, we did a design doc and we did a pull request, feature branch, walking through the developer workflow, planning a new feature. And there's some included like errors on purpose because this is educational. This is an educational tool, not a commercial application. In this video, I want to try to actually do some implementation. So I'm going to git branch, and I'm going to check out a different branch. I'm going to start by checking out main, git fetch origin mouse, or git fetch origin main, git reset dash hard main. Why do I reset dash hard instead of pulling? Because I don't want to even deal with the possibility of conflicts. Like, I just don't care. I'm sure that I want to take the remote literal main. So now I'll create a new branch. Let me create an issue first so that I can have a feature branch for it. So here is the existing issues. We'll create a new one. New one will be implement auth microservice. Okay, submit a new issue. Normally I would give a bit of a description there, but I'm just going to keep the description as designed under this. And then I can also reference the PR number. So the PR number would be 3. I can do number 3. GitHub will understand both sorts of hyperlinks. Thank you for the likes. Quick reminder, YouTube and Twitch are in my TikTok bio if you want to see the full screen. Okay, so as designed under these, and now I have a new feature branch ID, which is 6, so I'll branch that, git branch 6, and I'll call this auth service IMPL for implementation. Check it out. There is a flag. I always forget if it's branch dash capital C or checkout dash capital V, so that you can create the branch and check it out in one move. That's not a big deal. It's like a micro optimization, right? Cool. So what we want to do now is find a Flask tutorial. So build a Flask. I think we can go to like the official like Flask website. I thought the docs were pretty good last time I checked it. You don't need a master class. This is like a small task. This one does mention Docker though, so I'm opening that up because um, one question is how are we going to deploy this bad boy? Python and Flask, this looks good. And then the last thing I'll do, I do have a couple deployment platforms in mind. So deploy Flask to Heroku's an option. Vercel actually support Flask. Flask Hello World. Whoa, I didn't realize Vercel supported Flask for some reason. Flask 2, let's double check that that's the latest version of Flask. It's 2. Okay, so Flask works on Vercel. I don't know if Django does. You can do a Vercel deployment. And what about Fast API? If they've got it supported at this point, if they support the others. Okay, so Vercel, deploy Fast API Vercel. Vercel is a trusted platform. I'm not seeing a template. I'm not seeing like a Vercel provided template, but there's still a bunch of examples. LogRocket is great. You can check out their podcast. Highly recommend it. So You gotta love how concise Fast API can be. So Vercel is a live option. Heroku, you can make it work, but I think it's kind of outdated. I wanted to think about render or railway. So render Fast API, Tiangolo. I don't know what this is. Uses Jinja, yeah. So this is documentation. Deploy a template to deploy a simple Python Fast API project to render. Cool. So at this point, I will just note them in the README, various options. This will be 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 3. Vercel, render, and railway. They're all going to work. And then for containerized deployment, there's a different one. Not Circle CI. Do you want to know? See if I can find it quickly. I'm not sure if I'll be able to. So notice I'm avoiding the big cloud platforms, Azure, AWS. Maybe it was serverless.com. I'm avoiding Azure, AWS, and GCP and so forth. Container image support for AWS Lambda. This is, I think, not what I want. This is not what I want. Right, so AWS, you would be wanting to do Fargate for sure. There is a different hosting provider. Looks like Atlassian is trying to do that. I have not used it. Maybe Atlassian would be a good idea there. And if I don't see it with these last couple websites, we'll close out the option. Was I thinking of Vulture? I think the answer is no. Yeah, so I think I cannot find it. There's something like Railway for containers, basically. But we will avoid that. So, not using Docker. Cool. Going to slam the likes for you. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. And so we have to pick one for now, and we can always change it later. But for now, let's try Vercel. You could pick all three of them because deploying all three to Railway might put you over over the free tier. And then that is downside of multiple, harder to deploy. Okay. See, Vercel makes it so easy to just click this button. And if you click this button, you'll have your hello world Flask endpoint, npm-ig Vercel. The problem is this setup will not allow deployment of the Django app. And this might be the solution. Yeah. This is like somebody else's Flask microservice. So this uses Docker. I'll make a note of this. I think I can close these. What is an MSA? Microservice architecture. They're calling it MSA now. Gosh. Okay. Gotta stay hit with the abbreviations, huh? So this is looking good. I made a note of this, so I should be able to close it. Okay. I want to create the issue on the GitHub repo that calls out that I need to update Vercel.json. So here's the implement auth microservice needs to handle monrepo. This should be split into its own issue, actually. As long as we have a good reason to think that we can do it, we'll split that out. Update Vercel.json such that Django and Flask both deploy, both build and deploy based on a single PR main push. And then we can say it depends on number 6. That's kind of a practice that lets if multiple developers are working on one code base, they know that, hey, like 6 needs to be done before this number 7 comes out. Can you do Python Flask with ping integration? Yeah, I think if we have a RESTful service that would allow you to ping an endpoint, if that's what you're asking. Okay, so close some of these tabs. Okay, so we are going to rip this. We are not going to click the button, one-click deploy. We're not doing that. We are ripping this. And I might want to develop from scratch something that says Flask instead of making an API folder. I might want to have a Flask-API folder, because what we're doing here is we need to deconflict. We actually have a variety of APIs. So calling that folder, oh, there's Lee Rob. Lee Rob's great. Let's give him a follow. I think I'm already following him, but just shout him out for y'all to go give him a follow. Lee Robinson at Vercel. Developer advocate, but also a great engineer. Okay. So it's kind of hacky to say like Flask-API because it's embedding the framework into the URL. You would want something more generic, usually like maybe auth API. That's also ambiguous because there's multiple different kinds of auth. We have the Django auth and we have the third-party auth. So yeah, so talking that out loud, I think third-party auth works. So I'll call this folder, instead of API, I'll call it third-party auth API. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all the likes. Okay, so I'm going to grab this Vercel.json, and we're going to rip it, which means that we are going to copy it. And so here I'll do a new file, Vercel.json. This is going at the top level of the whole monorepo, as it should. That's where the Vercel.json should go. Okay, now I'm going to tweak API to say third-party auth. I'm just going to call it we can call it third-party auth API. That works. Now we need to build a folder, and it needs to have an index.py. So this will be third-party auth API. And then we'll do new file, index.py. Okay, so let's go over there and look at their index.py code and steal that too. So this is just going to return the string about, if I'm not mistaken. Let's double check if they have any templating stuff in case about is a, yeah, these are just string literals being returned. I love how concise that endpoint syntax is, don't you? Otherwise, it's a get ignore, readme, and requirements. And the only requirement is Flask. So I think we're good. We can add to the readme, we can say Flask impl ref. Okay. Let's install Flask. So poetry, what is the syntax? I'm thinking add, but I'm not sure. Add? Poetry add Flask. Yep. Okay, cool. So poetry add Flask. And this will be a really good time to commit. So this would be a chore, which we're adding the Flask dependency. This is a really good opportunity to commit. So we'll look on this lock file. We can see it added click, which is a tertiary dependency. It's when I installed Flask, Flask depends on that. But here's the one that I care about, Flask. It's 2.2.2. We earlier checked. That's the latest. PyProject toml now says 2.2.2 or better. So I'm going to stage these. Git commit -m chore poetry add Flask. I could have said something like, I could have used a feature and like a conventional commit prefix feat, and I could have said init, like I'm initializing the feature. So I could have said init, like auth microservice or something. Okay. And in theory, Vercel should be able to build those endpoints now. So let's go over to Vercel. We're going to go over to Vercel. We're going to add a new project. Hopefully I have space for a new project. I might have to delete one of my old projects. Let's import Python hello web monorepo. Preset. I don't know that I want to choose a preset. So I could pick Flask here since I added Flask. To the Vercel JSON. So Vercel is going to read this Vercel JSON. So it's saying use Python. This looks good to me. I don't know. I might want to pick a Flask preset, but like really I don't. Really I don't. So I'm going to say other. I'm going to leave it at other. No build variables, whatever. Let's just see if it works. I don't know. It might not work. If it doesn't work, we can go back and pick the Flask framework. 404 not found. Ooh. Let's make sure I can even run this. So poetry run, Flask run. Could not locate a Flask application. Flask app environment variable. Okay, maybe I do need to set an environment variable. So let's go back here. Like according to this, I don't need to set any environment variables. So the trick here may be that I am using, that they are using the folder name API, and that has a meaning to Vercel. So let's rename this third-party auth API. Let's rename it API after all. And if this works, we will need to do an additional layer of nesting, which maybe we need to do. Okay, so let's try this. Poetry run, Flask run. Could not locate. And let's change these. Actually, let's leave that and let's try to do the Vercel dev thing first. And I bet it doesn't work, and then I bet we switch to, oh, I think I already have the Vercel command line installed. Cool. So Vercel dev, and then like I expect it will not work. Oh, set up and develop this. Sure. Bruh. Okay. Here's the not found thing. So this is parity. It's similar to what we saw on the build. You see the build preview right here? What are you making? A Flask microservice. It simulates an SSO. So like I'm logged into your application, but some other service is going to provide my role information. That's what we're doing. Hi from the Netherlands. What are you doing? Making an authorization microservice with Flask. Okay, so we've got parity, which is a good thing. It doesn't work, and now we are going to try to switch over to API. Before I do that, let me stop the server, rename the folder. My terminal is stuck. We'll trash it. Rename the folder. I, again, expect this will not work. Basically, we are proving that I have to name that folder API, and I'm going to do it as a last resort. So this is hanging, installing required dependencies, okay? Because it doesn't know that I'm using Poetry, so it's not installed. So Vercel is acting as my virtual environment, which is kind of weird. Say Vercel with Poetry. Okay, this also doesn't work. Let me kill this. I'm going to Poetry run Vercel dev. So in theory, this will launch Vercel inside of a Poetry context, and Poetry has Flask. I don't know if it actually works though. Like I don't know if the Vercel CLI is going to respect the Poetry context. Closing for now, as this is covered by the bundle plugin. Interesting, interesting. Partially covered now. Poetry bundle plugin. Hey, check this out. Localhost is still not working. Let's see. Vercel Python Bootstrap is crapping out. Lambda runtime handler. Yep. Okay. So let's close this. So, there's like a goofiness between Vercel dev and Poetry. So let's try to just do things the Vercel way. In the template, there was a requirements file. So it may be the case that Vercel is expecting requirements to be there. So let's do this. Hey.
Daddy.
What's up?
Ellie had my own candy because I gifted it to her, and I had the gorilla heart one, and Ellie had the chocolate bar one.
That's cool.
It was a sour one.
Did you get me any candies?
There was only 2.
Oh, man.
Daddy.
Cool. All right, I'll talk to you later, buddy.
And look at this thing.
I'll talk to you later. I'll talk to you later. Please close the door. Installing required dependencies. I had that same laptop. It was bad. Get a MacBook. I might. The thing is, I can play games on this one too. Okay, so that built. And remember, if this fails again, we're switching over to using the API folder name. Right now we are testing, so we only one change at a time so that we can get causal identification. So the change this time is the idea is Vercel dev installing from requirements.txt. That's the idea here. So basically, we're testing the theory that Vercel is ignorant of the, oh, well, there you go, it's working. So it looks like Vercel, out of the box, is ignorant of the poetry lock file, but they have some sort of, poetry plugin bundle. That may work. So we can add this as a backlog issue, but for now, we will try to deploy currently seems like Vercel dev installs deps based on requirements. Try to get it to respect, integrate with poetry block file. Related 1 and 2. Okay. Close this. Okay, so now that we have gotten the hello world to show up, let's try committing again. So maybe we don't need to use that API folder name, and I would prefer not to, because it's ambiguous, isn't it? Which API? Okay, so here we will git commit -m chore deps to rec file. See what happens. Here we are going to set the upstream, create a pull request. Let's draft it and see if the Vercel hook we close this 6. We're going to draft that, and we want to see if the Vercel hook gets activated. Whoa, the camera there is pretty janky, isn't it? All right, well, we're going to wrap up the stream because it's 7 and I have a meeting. But even though you really can't see it, let me see if I can change the brightness. Okay, a little change in brightness goes a long way, huh? So the Vercel hook right here worked. So we can access the dashboard over here. No unresolved feedback. It looks like the build passed. We can visit the preview.
Daddy! Daddy!
And the session
I
crashed.
saw a bad guy by you.
You saw a bad guy?
Yeah, come on, Daddy. Come on. Get out.
All right, bye, y'all.
Daddy's looking at you. Just come here.